Spider-Man, we found we'd written ourselves into a corner, which was, when we were reading Spider-Man when we were younger, Spider-Man had to juggle, oh, Aunt May's feeling sick. I have to do homework. I have a date. I also have a cold, and this full face mask is not good for sneezing. And he'd have to juggle that and then throw in an occasional Dr. Octopus. As we creators got married, had kids, bought homes, had mortgages, we literally, I don't know how we didn't notice this sooner, but we wrote the character along with us. And suddenly we were in this position where he was married to Mary Jane. So the sexual tension elements of stories are a little out the window at that point. He's married to Mary Jane. She's the most successful model in town. So they bought a beautiful penthouse apartment. And he was supposed to be the guy who never had any good luck. And now he's the luckiest guy in New York, really. And we just wrote him away from our audience because we took him along with our lives. And he finished school, so he was out of school, so that was less accessible to our target audience, which was, teenagers. So we were batting around different ideas how to deal with that. We talked about if Mary Jane gets killed or if they get divorced. Well, that would have just been more baggage on Peter Parker. Now he's a widower or a divorcee. So we didn't really want to add more baggage. We were trying to get him back to the simpler sort of thing. I remembered from when I was young, the original clone storyline Jerry Conway did, I think, for 2 issues, and I remembered it so clearly because I couldn't have articulated this when I was young. But what was interesting is that a clone of Peter Parker is a good guy because Peter's a good guy. So it was a story about 2 good guys in a bad situation. And it really made you go back and forth on who you're rooting for. You obviously want the Peter that you know and you've been reading about to not lose his life over this. But at the time, you thought, oh, this poor other clone guy, he got cloned. He didn't ask for the way he was born, and this is all his memories, and he feels like those are his friends and family, and you could really empathize. And that story ended theoretically with the clone dying. And I remember this also very clearly, that Peter had gotten Dr. Kurt Connors to test to see which one was the clone and which was the real Peter. And then the clone supposedly died, and Peter was swinging across town, and he had the envelope from Kurt Connors, and he ended up thinking, you know what? The way I love Mary Jane, I must be the real one. I can't be a clone. A clone couldn't have this strong a feeling. And he tore up the envelope and threw it away. And when we found ourselves in this position with Spider-Man 20 years later, maybe less than 20 years, I realized that was never really resolved. And what if the clone didn't die? Because, in fact, he was thrown down a smokestack at Con Ed down there, and it's not, as Howard Mackey always likes to say, it's not like there are fires at the bottom of the smokestacks. What if he had come out of there and realized he was a good guy, he didn't want to mess with this other Peter's life, and just took himself off to the West Coast to live a different life? And that put us in a position of, that's a Spider-Man who's single and hasn't finished school yet. So we could get him back organically to the character we thought would be better for our audience. And the plan was, it was 4 Spider-Man titles at the time. I think it was supposed to be a 5-month run, so there'd be 20 comics that would tell the story. And in the end, Ben Reilly, the clone, would turn out to be the real Peter, but we'd be able to write the other Peter off into the sunset with a happy ending, because Mary Jane would realize she was pregnant and they would go off into the sunset to go have the baby. And it even fit organically with Peter's motivation of, with great power comes great responsibility. It was just going to be him adjusting to, all right, my great responsibility now is to my wife and child. That's what I have to do, and I can't risk them by going out and fighting every other animal-themed villain that rolls through town. So that was the plan. We increased sales so much that sales and marketing kept coming to us every other month and saying, you can't end this. It has to go on. And it ended up going on for 2.5 years. We had a very tight outline of how that story was going to go. It got dragged on. There was a lot of padding thrown in the middle. People got pissed off. And then a new editor-in-chief took over, which was Bob Harris. And Bob did not like that ending for the story. He wanted the current Peter to stay as Spider-Man. I don't really know why. Bob's a good friend of mine. I don't think we've ever discussed what his logic there was, because we all knew we needed a single Peter who hadn't finished school, which is why they did the One More Day storyline years later, and they could have just done it organically then. But that was his decision. That he was editor-in-chief. It wasn't up to us, and it just got, those titles got burdensome